Welcome back, everybody. Today we're gonna be tying together this entire front end by building a track bar. So like I said, we're gonna be finishing up the front suspension of the Cherokee today by building a track bar setup. We're gonna be building a setup completely from scratch. We're gonna be building a unibody side bracket as well as an axle side bracket. And then we're gonna be building the actual track bar out of some DOM. With that track bar, we're gonna be using some 7/8 times and some 3/4 inch hardware. 3/4 inch hardware is pretty big for a track bar, but I wanna be able to use the same heims and the same hardware for the steering and the track bar, so I only have to carry so many spare parts. But more on that later. We're basically, everything for the front suspension is there. It's basically done. We still need to build a cross member between the two coilover towers, but we're gonna get to that in a later video. We still got a lot of rework, find a home for everything inside of that engine bay, but everything for the suspension is there. I wanna move on to the rear suspension so this Jeep can sit on its own weight front and back. So we're gonna throw this track bar in this week so we can move on. It's been about 2 months since we started this whole process. I'm not in the shop every single day, but we've gotten a lot done, but there's still tons more to be done. We've got Jake's Wrangler on the other side of the shop today. He pulled in last night. He's gonna be doing a head gasket to it. So if you all hear any banging, any noises, it's probably coming from over there. Jake is gonna be doing a 110 swap to this Wrangler as well. If you haven't seen the video that we released where we went and picked up the axles for his Wrangler, he's got a 2014 Dana 60 and a 14 bolt for the rear. It's a very nice setup for axles. It's arguably better than the setup that we're putting into the green Cherokee, the 2003 Dana 60 and 10.5. We're thinking about doing a series for the 110 swap for that Jeep as well. So let us know if that's something that you want to see once we're done with the green Cherokee. Anyways, let's work on this front suspension. Let's figure out how exactly we're going to do this track bar. Yeah! Now, before we start taking a literal 100 measurements on this, there's a few things that we need to consider before we go build this track bar setup, and that I think y'all should know if you're going to take on a project like this as well. There's 3 main factors to this track bar setup, and it has a lot to do with this steering here, specifically this drag link. Essentially, this drag link and the track bar, they're one and the same with 2 very completely different jobs. This drag link is connecting our steering box to this passenger side knuckle, while the track bar is keeping the axle centered under the Jeep left to right. Like I said, 3 main things for an ideal setup. The first being that this drag link and the track bar have to be as flat as possible. Obviously, this drag link is not completely flat. This is as flat as we could get it for this setup in particular. The thing limiting us now for this drag link being even flatter is the steering box. We're using the stock location on a Cherokee for the steering box. We're just using a common pitman arm for a Cherokee. If we wanted to bring this flatter, we'd have to rotate that box a little bit. But for this build in particular, we don't need to be doing that. Number 2, the track bar and the drag link have to be as parallel as possible. A good example I like to give of this is if we're looking at the front of the Jeep, at the front suspension of the Jeep, I don't even want to know that there's a track bar on here. I want it to be completely hidden by this drag link. That's how it is with my red Cherokee. That's how it originally was with the green Cherokee. That's how it is with Jake's Wrangler. It's definitely the ideal setup. And lastly, number 3, we want this track bar to be as close to the same length as its drag link as possible. There's going to be a lot of factors that are going to be limiting this. For example, at full lock on a left-hand turn, we're only going to have so much room right here between the axle and this drag link, which means the mount for this track bar can only go so far to the passenger side. Because this gap, I don't know if y'all can see this gap is going to close up once we take a left-hand turn is what I'm saying. Also, it may not be as big of a problem, but there's going to be a big coil over here. It's definitely going to take up some space over here, so we just got to keep that in mind as well. If we were working with coils, we'd have even less room. With that being said, we're going to try to make up some of this length for the track bar on the driver's side, kind of offset it from the unibody a little bit. I want these 2 bars to be the literal same length, just a little offset from each other. We gotta watch out for the unibody rails over here. We gotta watch out for the diff. There's a lot of factors that go into this. Hopefully we can make it work without having to put any bends in the bars. If you keep those 3 basic things in mind, you should have a good handling Jeep on the road and on the trail. You shouldn't have any death wobble, shouldn't have any weird wandering, shouldn't have any bump steer. Anyways, I think I'm procrastinating. Let's go take some measurements. I spent a long time deciding the best placement for this bracket. It made it difficult using the 3/4 inch hardware because we're already limited on space. I think it would have been best to go with 5/8 hardware, maybe even 9/16, but we already have everything for 3/4, and after taking some measurements, we should have just enough room if we place this bracket in just the right spot. So that piece I just cut out is the side piece for the track bar bracket on the axle side. We're doing the axle side bracket first. Hopefully I measured right and this should work. I'm not sure entirely if this is gonna work, but we got a big piece of 1/4 inch here that we can make mistakes. We got enough plate to make mistakes. We got plenty of 1/4 inch to go around. So I set the camera up in a way so hopefully y'all can see how nicely this piece fits. It's gonna go somewhere right here. You can see the truss is basically flat, flush I should say, with the axle tube. So it was pretty easy to get this, but then I had to add a curve to the piece as well. I was always intimidated by making curves on these pieces because I always thought it was gonna be a pretty challenging thing to do, but come to find out, it's actually pretty easy. You can see it follows that really nice and tight. Always try to make stuff nice and tight like this, basically butted up right up against each other. You don't want any gaps because that makes for a stronger weld. So this looks really nice. This is at full lock on a left-hand turn. This drag link is much further from this piece at full lock taking a right-hand turn. So I have it at full lock taking a left-hand turn right now just so we can check clearances. And so far, that looks really nice. This piece is looking really good. We're gonna go ahead and draw out the outside facing piece now on Fusion 360 and get that cut out. Making some good progress. This is the tougher of the probably 3 or 4 pieces that this bracket's gonna be made out of. So I'm glad that came out good. Let's go work on the easier piece now. This so-called easier piece is the front-facing section of this bracket. It's a simple 2-bend piece with one 3/4 inch hole for the heim. So simple, yet I managed to bend it too far. I actually do this a lot. If I wanna save the piece like in this case, I'll just flip it over in the press and straighten it out. I actually overbent both of the bends on this piece. I was able to straighten them out, but once the piece was straight again, it was usable, but it just had a weird shape to it from being repaired in 2 spots. Spoiler alert, we're not gonna end up using this piece, so it's fine. You'll understand in a little bit. So here's what we've got so far. These 2 pieces are tacked together. We've got a heim in there. I'm gonna go ahead and take that out so I can show you. But yeah, this is looking really good, nice and straight. Everything fits really good. We've got 2 cutouts right here, 2 1/2 inch by 1/4 inch rectangles. That's so we can weld to the backside of the piece we're about to make. It's gonna be the second mounted location for this heim, kind of like the backside of it. This piece is gonna be difficult as well. It's gonna be similar to it up here, but then it's gonna have to bend over and attach to the axle tube. So that might be challenging. Let's see what we can come up with. So I made a cardboard cutout. This is basically what we're gonna try to do. So this bracket is very similar to what you'll see online. Most brackets will have, see it ripped off. This was a tab that kind of came over. This would have been a piece with a bend in it and it would have gone and attached the axle tube right there. That's how most brackets on the market are set up. But now that I'm looking at this, it's gonna be a lot easier and possibly even better if we just make this piece literally just like this. And then we make some sort of triangle piece that has a cutout for the axle tube and it'll tie all of this together. Honestly, that might be a little better. Usually you see these brackets online just open right here, but I'm wondering if that'll be better. Let's give that a shot and we'll see how it comes out. This piece looks really good, came out pretty nice. I'm just gonna have to get it up. Oh, perfect. I'll just get the slag off of it and we should be good to go. We don't have to put any bends in that. We're just gonna have to line it up and tack it right into place. I've been getting some questions online as to why I'm building everything on the Jeep. I can buy basically everything I built online from different companies for not all that much money, and I would have saved a lot of time. For me personally, I like building everything exactly how I want it. Everything is custom built for this Jeep, and I am saving money. So far, I bought 2 4x3 1/4 inch sheets of metal. One was about $150, one was about $130. So under $300, I was basically able to make everything for this front suspension, not including the hardware or the heims I had to buy, or say the DOM as well. $300, that's pretty good in my opinion. If I were to buy everything online, I think I priced it out at one point before I did all this, it would have cost me well over $1,000. So in the end, I'm gonna save a ton of money. Also, I've messed up a lot of pieces. You know, I try some things here and there. Some pieces don't work. If I were to do this again without messing up any pieces, I could have fit every single piece I cut out onto one sheet of 1/4 inch. Right there, that would have been roughly $150 to build everything for this front suspension. In the end, everything is gonna be built by me, which to me is a bragging right, and it's gonna be much cheaper than if I were to buy everything. So hopefully, so we got a curve in it. This piece of cardboard didn't have a curve in it. I'm hoping that these curves are gonna work. I haven't cleaned off this piece yet, but oh man, that fits mint. That fits so good. Perfect. I'll get that cleaned up and we'll get it tacked into place. All right, we've got that bracket tacked into place, and I've got a piece of PVC to act as the track bar. I think we're gonna end up having to redo this bracket basically. That's the thing with fabricating projects like this. I mean, it's basically trial and error, but that's totally fine. If we have to rework it, we're just gonna have to make it taller. So we're gonna have to cut out all 4 pieces again, but we're just gonna have to make them all slightly taller. Our issue is, I think at full bump, we're gonna have an issue with this track bar hitting the diff. We're gonna go ahead and check it first though. We're gonna put this at full bump. I've got a longer piece of PVC here. We're gonna cut that to length. We're gonna position the unibody side to where we think it would go if we had a bracket here. And then we'll put this at full bump and see what we're looking at. I think we're gonna have a problem with it touching. On my red Jeep out there, the red Cherokee, there's about 2.5 inches between the track bar and the top of the diff, and it just slightly touches when, you know, you hit the right bump. This, if we're just eyeballing it, it looks like there's only about 2 inches between that. So that's definitely, I mean, that definitely will probably hit. But let's test it out first. Let's cut this PVC to length and get it up to full bump. Oh, I should also note that I made this track bar as low as I did, that bracket as low as I did. It's actually not completely parallel with the drag link. It's actually a little lower. I did that because on the other side, that the nut on the 3/4 inch bolt goes like right about here at the where it starts to curve down, the top of the truss curves down. So I did that so the top plate of the truss doesn't interfere with the nut. But if we do have to make this taller, I'll end up just notching out the top plate of the truss, and I think it'll be just fine. I began working on getting that longer piece of PVC cut out like I said I was going to, and then I realized we have an issue. I just ran into a huge issue. We're having some problems with the steering that I just realized, some binding and some stuff hitting. We're gonna have to address that before we can move forward with this track bar. I put the coilovers in once I realized this. We've just got the lower springs on this side. We don't have any springs on the other side. So just so it was easier to fully compress this without the Jeep lifting up. This side actually has about another inch to go before it's fully compressed. We are not at full lock. We still got a little ways to go before we can get full lock, taking a left-hand turn. And we're having an issue with the pitman arm hitting the tie rod. So we're not able to complete a left-hand turn with this. That's a big problem. So like I said, we're at full bump right now. The suspension is all the way up at the top of its travel. Just about. We got another inch, like I said, but we're not able to complete a left-hand turn. That is a huge problem. I thought about maybe flipping this and putting this heim on top of the pitman arm, but that's gonna create binding issues when we're at full droop on the other side. So we've gotta figure something out right here. I think the only option here is we're not relocating the steering box. I think the only option is we gotta get a pitman arm that doesn't have as big of a drop. We could still have binding issues at full droop if we get a shorter pitman arm. What I'm thinking is I know the TJ and LJ pitman arms are slightly shorter than an XJ one. The XJs are very long actually. They got a pretty good drop to them. And ZJs I'm pretty sure even have more. So I'm gonna see what I can do because we can't finish this track bar now until I fix this issue. Hopefully we can still use that drag link. I'm gonna see if I can find a TJ or LJ pitman arm local, and if not, then, I mean, hopefully we can. If not, this is gonna be the end of the video. I spent a long time, too much time, researching pitman arms. I decided I didn't wanna go with a different pitman arm. It would definitely be the quick fix for this issue, but in the long run, it's not gonna be the best route to go. All right, so I thought of something that's probably gonna work a little better than getting a new pitman arm. The downside to getting a pitman arm that's not dropped down as much as the current one we have is those two heims on the drag link at ride height are gonna be basically almost maxed out or close to it. That's the reason you want your drag link as flat as possible. You know, something else that would work is a twisted pitman arm, but we're not gonna get into making our own pitman arm right now, possibly down the road, because I think on this steering setup, or just this front end in general, the weak point is gonna be that pitman arm. But like I said, we're not getting into that right now. So say we went with that other pitman arm, we made the drag link at that steeper angle. Once we go to flex out the Jeep, those times are basically, before we get to the end of our travel, those times are gonna be maxed out. We can't have that happening. That's gonna cause some binding, and that causes braking. So obviously we don't want that. I thought of something else that's probably gonna work a little better. So I totally forgot that offset heims were a thing. Right now, I have this tie rod sitting as if we had offset heims on either end. An offset heim is just gonna basically do what it says, offset the threaded portion of the heim from the bolt. So the general measurement for an offset heim and how much it's offset that I've seen from my research is roughly 1 inch. With that being said, I have this tie rod set up roughly 1 inch from the bolt hole, as if we were to have those offset heims in it. It's still hitting over here, but I think this is a sacrifice we're gonna have to make. I can add some stops to the steering knuckles to make it stop before we get to this point. Literally all I have to do is bump it out another 1/16 of an inch. I think that's the sacrifice we're gonna have to make, at least until we make our own pitman arm, but that's gonna be down the road. So with that being said, I'm gonna get 2 offset heims coming. We can probably install them next video. I'm gonna get this tie rod reinstalled onto the steering knuckles, and we're gonna continue on the track bar installed as if, you know, literally none of this had ever happened.
Now, I'm not that lucky. I quickly ran into a bigger issue. I'll explain exactly on camera what this new issue is in just a minute, but before that, I just wanted to say that for the rest of this day, I put the camera down for the most part to figure out how to proceed. I was pretty frustrated because with this new issue, I had to consider rebuilding the high steer arms we built in the last video. This was something that was just not an option. There's no room in the series to waste material like that, and even worse, there's no room to waste time like that. I took care of the issue, made a new taller axle side track bar bracket. It's actually much taller than the previous one, so we didn't have to notch the truss at all. And now, once again, we can move on.
So I'll admit, I haven't really been filming all that much today. I literally spent all of the day, well, the earlier part of the morning, just taking 100 different measurements on the suspension to make sure what we're about to do is gonna work. I was having a lot of clearance issues. I already told you all about the tie rod hitting the pitman arm and whatnot. Then I came across another issue with the drag link, and I couldn't move forward before I fixed that because that was gonna affect how the track bar is built. So I had to take care of that first. So I'm gonna show you all exactly what's going on and why I'm doing what I'm doing. We'll go take a look. I made some changes to how we're gonna be running our steering, specifically our drag link. As you can see, the axle end of the drag link is no longer inside of our high steer arm. It's not in a double shear location. It's up on top now. I wasn't happy with the angle of the heims when it was mounted down low. They were basically at the end of almost at the end of their travel while we were at ride height. So never mind when we dropped the suspension down another 9 inches when the coilovers are at full droop. That was definitely gonna be a binding point, and I spent a long time thinking about it, and this is what I came up with. I talked to a few guys who are running a similar setup. They said this is totally fine. It's not ideal, but if it's what has to be done, then like I said, it's totally fine. The only thing they recommended is somehow adding some bracketry up top here to make this a double shear mount. So we're gonna be doing that in the future, but for now, just for setup, we're gonna be leaving it just like this. This is mounted up much higher than it was before, so I'm pretty happy about that. Before, the angle of this drag link was around 14 degrees, and right now it's about 9 degrees, so we were able to make it much flatter. I also didn't want to go make some new high steer arms that we made in the last video because it'd be expensive to do that. I have to go buy all new 3/8, and I'm not looking to do that. So I think this is gonna be just fine. We had to take care of this first before we worked on the track bar because that was gonna change how the track bar is gonna be built. As you can see over here, I made a new axle side track bar bracket. It's the same exact bracket that we had before. It's just a little taller. If we were running coils, this bracket would definitely interfere with the coils, but since we're running coilovers, that's definitely a plus. We can mount it where it is right now, and this coilover shouldn't interfere with this bracket. When you're looking under the Jeep from the front, you can't even tell that this track bar is back here. It's completely hidden by this drag link, basically. Like I said, that's exactly what I was going for. So everything over here should be taken care of right now. The last thing we gotta do in this video is make the unibody side bracket and cut the DOM out for the track bar, but let's work on the unibody side bracket first.
With all of that figured out, we can move on to the easier of the two brackets. I was originally thinking of incorporating some of the original track bar mounting holes into this new bracket design, but after looking at it for a while, we are just going to be fully welding it to the unibody stiffener without the use of any bolts. This should be plenty strong. Once I had one side of the bracket cut out, I set the Jeep to full bump to check clearances, and I was very happy with what I was seeing.
We've got the Jeep at full bump right now, and I want to show you all our angles. I've got the PVC track bar up in here. Take a look at this. So it's a little dark, but look how flat everything is. That track bar and the drag link are on the same exact plane. They're perfectly parallel. Our axle side track bar bracket doesn't look like it's gonna interfere with the drag link or anything. We shouldn't. I'm gonna drop this side down to full droop to see if our coilover is gonna maybe contact this, but I don't think it is. It was definitely the right move to put this drag link up on top of the high steer arm. I think eventually we're gonna get a longer bolt, and here, you guys can see it right here. We're gonna end up putting a DOM sleeve right here and going all the way through with the bolt. That should do the trick over here. I'm gonna take this big 1-inch bolt and flip it around so the head is down here, and then we're gonna end up making some sort of double shear mount for this, but that'll be in the future. So yeah, if we come over here, everything's nice and flat. I wish it looked like that at ride height, but we're not that lucky. You can't even see that there's a track bar back there. The track bar and the drag link are the same exact length. You can see we kind of have it offset a little bit over here, but it looks like this mount should do the trick. It's better to see right here, but you can see the drag link and the track bar are not perfectly parallel. This unibody side end is slightly more forward than it needs to be, but I'm doing that so we can clear the diff cover. We're not touching it right now. We're not anywhere near. We have about 1 inch. We're gonna end up having an aftermarket diff cover on here, but by the looks of the one I'm looking at that I'm hopefully gonna get, it doesn't look like we're gonna have any issues. So yeah, this is looking awesome. We obviously still gotta do the offset heims on this tie rod, but that's gonna be in the future. Right now, I'm gonna go ahead and get the rest of this bracket made up.
I love fabricating like I do in these videos. It's absolutely amazing and fulfilling to take an idea in my head, put it down on paper, then the computer, and finally to physically have it in front of me. It's not always easy to get to that point like y'all saw today. I hope I was able to convey that or display that well enough throughout this video. It can be frustrating. If you want to get into fabricating, or if you already are, then you'll definitely know problems do occur. Things will come up forcing you to build a different piece, go a different route, or just work with what you can, what you already have. It's the name of the game. Over the course of every project I take on, I find better ways to do things and improve my skills, and overall just have a better product in the end.
We now have a track bar. It took a lot to get to this point, but I'm pretty happy with how the two brackets came out. They're basically how I imagined them in my head. I was thinking it probably would have been a lot easier. I think I'm gonna try this on a future rig with going full hydro. This rig in particular, I don't think it would have been best suited for. We're gonna be doing thousands of miles across the entire country. And I know full hydro can be driven on the road. I'm gonna get a lot of comments saying that, but I'm talking literal thousands upon thousands of miles we're gonna be putting on this Jeep. So it's just not best suited for this rig. For a future build, I'd love to do a double triangulated long arm setup in the front along with full hydro, so we don't have to worry about a drag link or a track bar. I'll definitely be trying that in the future. Probably for a dedicated rock crawler though. We're gonna be adding some gussets to this frame side mount. I think just one on each side should do the trick, just for some extra security so we know it's not going anywhere. And then down below on the axle side, we're gonna be adding a hydro assist setup, hopefully later this year. We're gonna be adding some bracketry between the track bar bracket and the axle tube for the hydro assist ram, so that should help stiffen up that bracket as well. And then I will not be whatsoever worried about either of those brackets. Now we still got a ton to do up here. I'm gonna have to order some hydraulic bumps in the future. We're gonna have to do limit straps, brake lines. We're gonna have to finish the coilover towers, then put a cross member between the two of them. So we still got our work cut out for us up front. But for the next couple of videos, for the next 2 videos, we're gonna be doing some smaller things, and then we're gonna be moving onto the rear. We're gonna get the rear situated so this Jeep can sit on its own weight weight front and rear. And then I want to know what y'all want to see for the next couple videos. Do you want to see me build a set of sliders and boat sides, or do you want to see me re-gear these axles and put a locker in the front? We're going to be doing both of those things, but I want to know what y'all want to see first to kind of give you an option. I got some pretty cool ideas of what I want to do with the sliders and the boat side, so I'm kind of leaning towards that. It's also probably going to be a lot cheaper, but I don't mind doing the gears in the locker if that's what y'all want to see. Let me know down in the comments below. I also want to say thank you for all the great feedback I got last video. I asked everyone's opinion on gear manufacturers. I think it was Yukon, Revolution, and Motive. And as of right now, I'm leaning towards Revolution just because I like to try new products, new manufacturers. I've never tried Revolution, but if we don't end up going with them, it'll probably definitely be Yukon. As for lockers, I'm pretty excited. We're going to be doing an ox locker in the front. We're going to be doing one air actuated, and we're going to have the driveway lock, so it's going to be a pretty sweet setup. Like I said, let me know what y'all want to see first. Sliders in both sides or lockers and gears. I also wanted to say how excited I am because as of last video, we had a lot of people reach out to us and say they would love to go wheeling with us and the green Cherokee once it's done. So we're definitely going to be setting that up in the future. I'm thinking a 1 or 2 night trip over in Moab. I've got a few awesome epic camp spots that we could go to. I'm down for just about anything. I don't think you're going to see me running Pritchett Canyon in the green Cherokee, but just about anything I'm down for. So let me know down in the comments below what trails you want to run. It's Moab. There's dozens and dozens of great trails out there. As for this video, I think it's over. I gotta start filming another video right now. So I'll see y'all on the next one. We got some pretty cool stuff coming your way. If you enjoyed the video and enjoyed the series so far, consider subscribing. We've got a goal of 4,500 subscribers by the end of the year. 4,500 total subscribers by the end of the year. So far, we're right on track. We're actually ahead of schedule. I appreciate y'all for watching. I'll see you out on the trail, and I'll see you next time.